Everyone wants to have a pro gaming controller, but not everyone wants to spend $200 to get one. So here comes FLYDIGI with the Vader 4 Pro. Now this controller has been out for a while, but in 2025, is it still the king of value? This is David, your casual nerd. Let's go ahead and check this out. Before we start, if you guys are looking for a more technical review, please check out Gamer Heaven's review or Vkuda's review. They just go way more in depth. This is just going to be an average gamer's perspective. FLYDIGI has been in the game for a while. They're more popular in China, but I know when the Vader 3 Pro came out, that's when they became popular here in the US. Which brings us here to the Vader 4 Pro. It's been ranked amongst the top controllers in its class because of 3 words: Hall effect sensors. Side by side with other Pro controllers, this thing has tremendous value over something like the Pro BFG. If you buy the module with the Hall effect sensors for this controller, you're looking upwards of $200 or more. So that just makes the value of this controller just insanely good. So getting more into it, what do we get with this controller? All we get is a USB-C cable, the instructions, and a 2.4 dongle. I mean, realistically, it's all you need for a gaming controller, but it would be nice if it came with a little bit extra. And upon first impression, it immediately reminds me of the Xbox Core controller. The size, the weight, it's very similar. But the moment that you start noticing all these extra buttons, all of these extra dials, the Vader 4 Pro just crushes the Core controller. And as far as the build quality goes, the plastic is very similar to the Core controller. It's a nice texturized feel around the grips. The texturization also goes around the dials and the bumper and triggers. So when you have your full grip around this thing, it's super ergonomic. But then again, it's also very similar to the Xbox Core. Since we're talking about the form factor and the weight, let's compare this to the Xbox Core controller. So for the Vader 4 Pro and the Xbox Core, they do both weigh around 270 grams. And when I did weigh them myself, I was really surprised that they weighed almost exactly the same. But the moment that we start talking about the Vader 4 Pro, this is when it starts getting in its bag. This controller has 4 added back buttons, and I must say that out of all the Pro controllers that I've used, the way that these are laid out, I think they're just perfect. They're nice and recessed, and they don't get in the way when you start panicking in those gaming situations. And they're also programmable in FLYDIGI's app. So if you're like me and you don't really like to use back paddles, you can disable them in the software. And if we flip the controller around, there's also 2 front-facing buttons here as well. And once again, these can be programmed in FLYDIGI's app. I think this turns out to be really good because a lot of other Pro controllers don't really have added face button. So I can see this being more useful with like fighting games, or maybe even some kind of RPGs where you want some added functionality in the game. And one more time, let's flip around to the back, and then we can see our toggles for our triggers. So if you guys like the mechanical pulls of the Xbox Core controller, we have this set to right now. But the moment that we flip on this toggle, we have clicky triggers. And I gotta say, whenever I am using these in games, I'm almost always on the short trigger pulls. I also really love the sound of these things. They sound really satisfying. The face buttons are also clicky as well. So they do sound pretty similar. So if you're playing for a long period of time, your ears are going to be treated to some very nice clicky sounds because of the lightweight and the plastic that this controller is made out of. Also the placement of the added buttons and the extra paddles. I'm not getting any kind of hand cramps when I'm using this for a long period of time. I know there are some of you who still care about looks for a controller. The only thing is that this controller only comes in black at the current making of this video. I really do wish that it came in a white color, kind of like their Apex 4, which I do have back here. This controller in this white color would look really good. If we turn this controller on, we do see we get some nice RGB in the front. And the RGB is tasteful, it's not overdone, it's not too much. Plus you get a small FPS boost. Everybody knows about that. Next, let's talk about some connectivity options, and here's where we get a little bit more technical. Connection-wise, we have wired, Bluetooth, and the 2.4 dongle. As far as wired and the dongle goes, the performance is perfect. But if we switch on over to Bluetooth onto the PC, that's where this controller starts to fail a little bit. FLYDIGI does say that each mode of this controller does operate at a 1K polling rate, but I highly doubt that because whenever I'm using this with Bluetooth on the PC, it's just way too slow. Realistically, on the PC, you're going to be using the dongle or the wired setup anyways. And if we're talking about battery life, honestly, one of my biggest disappointments of this controller, it's not very good. With this controller, realistically, I'm getting around 10 to 12 hours with it. That's about a 2 or 3 day gaming session, depending on how long you play. My guess is that the RGB had something to do with it because I did test it with it on. But the good news is that you can turn off the RGB in the software, and that's exactly what I did. And it did boost me up to about 16 or so hours, a decent sized boost. So we did touch upon latency and responsiveness a little bit earlier, but I do want to get a little bit more in depth with it because in my experience with this gaming controller, it was buttery smooth. I played some Stellar Blade, some Marvel Rivals, and also some COD, and this performed exceptionally well on each one of them. And I did watch a few other reviews and they each complained about connectivity issues. I honestly didn't really get any of them. If we talk about the compatible devices and as far as the major platforms go, this is only compatible with the PC and the Switch. You cannot hook up the dongle onto a PS5 or an Xbox and expect it to work. And also no headphone jack on anywhere of this controller. Kinda sucks, I guess. Moving on to the special features of this controller. So one cool thing that a lot of other Pro controllers don't include is a gyroscope, and this controller does have one. And in previous controller reviews, you guys have made your voice heard and you guys like gyroscopes in your controllers. For me, it's not really my cup of tea, but I did hear that a lot of people like to use these types of controllers with their Android or their Switch devices. To me, it just kind of reminds me of the olden days of the PS3. I have heard that this gyroscope does perform really well. Now onto one of the biggest features of this controller, the Hall Effect thumbsticks and the Hall Effect triggers. So responsive. Gaming with like an Xbox Core controller, it just feels like I'm using ancient tech. Hall Effect over analog any day of the week. So as far as the thumbsticks go, you can adjust the tension of each one of the sticks. They're so easy to switch on the fly, and my favorite part is that there's enough tension in these rotating dials that they don't get knocked around. This is not going to move on you. You can easily rely on the thumbsticks to stay put. A lot of the other controllers like the Elite 2 make you pull out a device to rotate and adjust those thumbsticks. This is on the fly, and it's really something that you have to experience for yourself. Now onto the final verdict of this controller, and my ratings are buy at full price, try it out, wait for a sale, or pass. In today's review, I'm going to be giving this controller a buy at full price with a really high value rating of a 9 out of 10 for 80 bucks, and it has just about the same features as a controller that's worth twice. This is amazing value. Now if only FLYDIGI could work on this one. But all jokes aside, who I'm recommending this product to is just for anybody who's looking for a pro controller who doesn't want anything fancy, no bells and whistles, just something that works. You don't care too much about the design, you just want a down and dirty gaming controller. Watch this next video if you're interested on these two controllers that I did go a little bit on about on this review. But thank you guys so much for watching. This is David serving you a little side of tech, and I'll see you in the next video. God bless you guys.